Good morning. Good morning. All right, everyone, it's about that time. I'm going to ask you to grab your coffee, grab your seat, grab your bagel, and we're about to get started with the panel. Welcome to Cafe IW. I see a lot of faces in the crowd who I haven't met before, and I'm really excited that you're here, and also happy to see some returning faces as well. So Innovation Works, this is our what we call Cafe IW. This is our educational series for tech and non-tech founders, meeting once in person and once virtually. We try to do a couple times a year. And our goal is to learn something new that we can help founders get their businesses to succeed. So my name is Ray, and I'm the marketing and events coordinator here at Innovation Works. We take Southwestern PA's tech companies to the next stage of growth with funding, expertise, and a network of connections to help startups succeed. We are one of the country's most active investors, bridging the gap between initial ideas to future growth, and the only fund to focus exclusively on the Pittsburgh region's high potential companies in software, hardware, and life sciences and robotics. You may already know about our accelerator programs, Alpha Lab Gear, Alpha Lab Health, and the Robotics Factory, which you might be able to see a little bit if you peek out the windows. We have plenty of resources for our companies. Today, we brought together a group of panelists for a discussion around marketing trends. We know that founders have to bootstrap a lot. They often have to wear many hats, and marketing is a field that's constantly evolving. So we brought some experts together, local experts, people in Pittsburgh that you can work with and touch base with, so that they can teach you a little bit about what they do. And so with that, I'm going to call up our panelists and our moderators to take their seats. And before I pass it off to them to, give a introduction and get things started, I'm going to introduce you to our moderator, Drake, who's taken his seat. Drake Som is the Chief Product Officer at Sitewiz, a business that's currently in our Alpha Lab cohort. And he's the recent winner of the 2024 Experimentation Thought Leader Award for the top rising influencer. So we could not think of anyone better to lead this panel. So with that, I'll stop talking and let Drake take it away.
Thank you so much, Ray, Jane, and everyone at Innovation Works, Alpha Lab, and the Robotics Lab for putting this together. Well, first off, how's everyone doing today? You doing okay? Great. It's a bit of an early start to be soaking up all of this marketing knowledge in. So hopefully everyone got a chance to stock up on your fair share of coffee and tea. I mean, it is on Innovation Works, so why not, am I right? Yeah. Like Ray said, I'm a part of an Alpha Lab accelerator company, so I'm allowed to make those jokes without getting into too much trouble. One question that I did want to ask everyone before we get started is, everyone who's a founder, please raise your hand. Keep your hands raised. And everyone who is an aspiring founder, please raise your hand. Very nice. We got a very full house. Anyways, we have a wonderful panel for you today, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to our panelists. First, we have Cooper Munroe. She's the CEO of the Motherhood and is an award-winning influencer marketer with 30 years of experience in public relations and marketing for the world's leading agencies, consumer brands, and nonprofits. And next, we have Jibril Washington. He's the founder of Intrinsic Media Company. It's a video production and creative agency. Jibril's work centers on authentic storytelling with a focus on helping brands connect meaningfully with their audiences. Jibril also serves as the filmmaking fellowship coordinator at the Pop District's Warhol Academy. It's an initiative of the Andy Warhol Museum. Would love to give the two of you a bit of a chance to share more about your work, be it maybe your grand missions or your day-to-day expertise. Cooper, would you like to go first?
Hello. Okay, this is working. How's everybody doing today? I'm good too. So I started Intrinsic Media just because I'm an artist first and foremost at heart. I love to create things that people can feel, people can interact with, people can relate to, and things that matter and things that mean something. And so from there, I kind of said, hey, can I take this into the marketing world and into branding and into marketing and catapult that in a way with their audiences. And I started on that path, and it's been great ever since. being able to work with different audiences, different brands, and understand them and understand people and how people work and what they want, what they need, and found a way. Graduated from Penn State, went to the MBA in New York, came back, started Intrinsic Media, worked with the Pop District, and just found love in being able to tell stories through video content, and just different branding and marketing ways and needs.
Thanks, Jibril. Cooper, would you like to share more?
I'd love to. Thank you for being here, everybody. I'm Cooper Munroe. I'm founder of the Motherhood, which is an influencer marketing agency. And I'm really happy to be the gray hair on this panel. When I found out that Drake is still in school, I was, a little shocked and intimidated because these guys have like seriously amazing brains. So thank you for having me here today. I've come out of big agencies working in Washington, D.C. and New York through my career, moved back to Pittsburgh, where I'm from, and started the Motherhood. We incorporated in 2006 out of an experience with Hurricane Katrina mobilizing through a blog post and a comment section aid to the Gulf Coast. So there was no real Facebook or Twitter at the time, but there was this very rudimentary technology of a blog post and a comment section that ended up taking tens of thousands of donations following the hurricane. And it was clear in that moment, it was very crystallizing that this technology is going to change everything. Now we take that for granted now, right? It's the air we breathe. It's everything around us. But at the time, it felt revolutionary that people could use this technology to mobilize. There's no hill we couldn't climb with each other and then with these tools. So built a community called the Motherhood. It's a play on the word neighborhood. And it was going to be this place where we were going to solve problems and do all these things. And then Facebook started to grow and Twitter started to grow. And people would say, "Are you a Facebook for moms?" Like, nope. But, tapping into all that time I'd spent at these big agencies, it's like, wow, here are people creating content, talking about brands, organizations, and causes that they are passionate about. Maybe we should build a bridge with the brands and the nonprofits and the groups that could partner with them. So our first client was Kimberly-Clark. We created a campaign around the 30th anniversary for one of their diaper brands, and our business model took off from there. And that was probably 2007. So there was no word for influencer marketing. Social media really didn't have a term either, but it was very evident that this is something that was going to be everything. It took a while. It took a lot of convincing these brands that it was okay for people on the internet to talk about them. But here we are now, and I'm very glad to be talking with you about marketing.
Thanks so much, Cooper, Jibril. Something on Cooper's website is we can't say that we came up with the term influencer marketing, but you guys can. So we should give her that credit, everyone. Unfortunately, we weren't able to be joined today by Jeff. Jeff is the founder of Humor. He's a very active LinkedIn user, so if anyone had any questions specifically for him, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer you there. But today, one of the core themes of our talk is authentic storytelling. And today, in an increasingly data-driven digital world, that sense of human connection and touch is super critical, but very elusive. And whether you're selling something, trying to get everyone behind a mission, or just trying to get people to empathize with you, it's a critical skill for everyone in marketing to sharpen up on. So the first question today is, how do each of you define authentic storytelling for your specific audiences? And what are some of the essential elements that really make it resonate?
So I love this question. To me, authentic storytelling, what does it mean, right? That's the question. To me, it means being relatable and being able to understand people and being able to see people. When we sit down with somebody and you have a conversation with them, you don't want to hear about all the accomplishments and all these things and, oh, I work here or I do this or I do that. You don't get to truly learn about somebody that way. You learn about them by sitting down with them and actually having a conversation with them about who they are and things that they're interested in and things that they aspire to do and what makes their heart beat, what stimulates their brain. Those are the things that get people stimulated and want to have a deeper conversation with you. And that's how the deeper conversations happen. So to me, it's just sitting down and being able to just truly connect with somebody in a meaningful way. That's how I would characterize it.
Thanks so much. Cooper, what do you think?
I think that's so smart. I really do. It's so smart because it can't be automated, right? Some things that guide us in our work or a lot of different things, but two that I'm going to talk about right now. One is, it's very obvious, but a brand or product serves a human purpose. So there has to be a human connection. It's a human, every single thing that you all do serves a human purpose of some sort. So we have to remember that in our marketing, that these types of things have to be relatable and touch you in some way. And the other is that people show up, they engage with, they share, they learn from, they care about content that adds value to their lives. So if you can combine this human purpose, but add value as well, it's not just spewing marketing speak. It's not, cutting and pasting whatever it is. It has to have value for people at the end of the day. And so sitting down, talking, understanding, deeply connecting in that way is going to achieve that.
Great points. Thank you both so much for these definitions. I think one of the main takeaways here for me is, especially when all the decisions we try to make are so data-driven, there's still an importance for these faces and the figures and the names beyond these numbers and the stories beyond the statistics. So thank you so much for these definitions to remind us what's really important in marketing. Another question is, what are some of the ways that you ensure influencer partnerships remain authentic and meaningful for the brand and audience? Cooper, this one's a little angled towards you, so if you'd like to start.
Sure. So it has to make sense. So if you are going to be so the way that influencer marketing works is that a brand or an organization, a nonprofit, is looking to partner with influencers to help share their story. So it's creating a campaign, it's creating a purpose, it's creating ideas around what would be shared, what's the messaging, what's the reason for this type of campaign or activation, and building a campaign around it. So let's say you're a B2B organization or a B2B company that makes, let's say, food packaging for restaurants. And you want to do a B2B campaign with influencers. So you're not just going to go out and get a Kardashian to do this, because there's no other restaurant owners that are, or people that are going to be following a Kardashian that's going to be wanting to purchase, food packaging, right? You've got to find the right people that line up, are telling their story already, or feeling passionate and are aligned with what you're trying to sell. So you're going to go to a restaurant owner, somebody who has a following that is mostly other restaurant owners, which that's going to make sense. So some things that happen there when you're thinking about identifying influencers to bring in to tell your story is that you either want trust partners, people that are going to give social proof on your behalf, that are going to be able to their audiences share validation about your product, talk about its efficacy, all of those different things, the storytelling that you want to tell about, to build trust with the audiences. The other is if you want to test, let's say you want to test some messaging before you do a big ad campaign. or you want to test some product ideas with a smaller audience, with a smaller budget. The other is translation. So let's say you have something that's a little bit more complicated and you can engage an influencer to translate some of these more complex ideas or some things that are harder for you to tell consumers, and somebody like an influencer that has a better way of articulating with their audience, that they can translate some of these more complex ideas.
Thank you, Cooper. And Jibril, the video marketing expert of the room, I'm curious, in video marketing, capturing attention within the first few seconds is key. And this is actually a discussion point we had before, sort of this attention economy. Could you share some tips on how to create compelling opening visuals or messages to keep viewers engaged?
Yeah, and I just want to quickly, I thought about something off of that
Please.
prior question real quick that I just want to mention too is, as a brand and as a brand, another key to that authentic piece is like pouring your heart out. So like the more you pour your heart out to somebody, the more that they're going to be able to relate. So I just wanted to mention that. I thought that was an important point. In terms of some tips for that first part of content, you want to make sure that it's strong. You need to have a strong opening statement or a strong opening visual, because that is what initially is going to stop me from continuing to just scroll ahead or go to the next video. If I'm on YouTube, if I want to just go to something else, I'm just going to click the next button or the back button or whatever. If I'm on Instagram or TikTok, I'm just going to scroll and keep going. So you need to have a strong opening statement and a strong visual to go with that. An example is, and it needs to be the most exciting part of the story. So for example, if I go, let me tell you about the time that I got $120 million off of one piece of content. If I say that in the very beginning, most people who are interested in like wanting to learn more about marketing, and they're gonna stay for the story, because that immediately is a spark of like, I need to know how you did that. So it needs to be something like super, super strong. If it's just a story about the brand, it needs to come out with something that is the most meaningful part of this entire story. And then once you hook the audience in, now you can begin to maneuver through the rest of the story. And then that visual piece also needs to be super, super strong. It needs to be an interesting shot, an interesting camera angle, something interesting going on within the frame that signifies, oh, like this is kind of cool. Like this is an interesting, I have the camera up here and it's looking down at me. That's an interesting shot. What do they have to say, or what is this about? You have to do something that is different from what is already being done. Because if I'm just scrolling and I just see a bunch of headshots, eventually I'm gonna go, these headshots, like there's nothing new here. I'm not gonna stop for the next headshot. If I just went through 10 headshots, but if I see a bunch of headshots and then on that 10th time I see a whole completely different angle of that headshot, I'm gonna go, ooh, I'm gonna stop on this. So think about how that looks. Think about what the story is and what you can hook people in with that story. It's just like the news. The news is really good at having the thing called readers, and they bring out the most important aspects of this story and give it to you, because they can't give you the entire story within one news segment. They only have 30 seconds sometimes to like actually tell the story. So they need to make it punchy, and they need to make it quick, but they also need to make it engaging and interesting and concise. So those would be my tips.
Great. How do you integrate brand messaging in an effective way and also have integrity around that authenticity of the what you're doing.
So repeat the question one more time.
So how are you making sure that the brand messaging, that the product messaging is in there, and that you're getting consumers to kind of take action in a way that's also lines up with what you're trying to get across through the video?
Right. And so that again, that depends on the type of video, because there's different types of videos as well that you can create. There's demo videos, there's product videos, there's brand videos, there's event videos. There are different types of videos that are set up for different types of for different parts of the funnel and different types of engagement. So if I make a product video, it's going to be very much to the point, and it's just going to be, hey, we have this new machine that will help you clean your house faster. It does this. We can list out the key benefits, right? It has these key benefits, and it helps you do this, and these are the benefits of it. And it's just that simple and that fast and that quick. And sometimes that's like when you're just like, you need, like, that's the, I'm getting the sell. And then you have other videos, like brand videos, are more like awareness, where you mix in a little bit of those key benefits in the middle part of the story. But then in the beginning of the story, you still talk about like, hey, we have this, there's these new machines, but maybe instead of you just going, the machine does this, and this, you have somebody talking about their user experience with the machine. And so if I'm talking about the user experience, naturally, I'm going to talk about benefits that as a brand, I might not even highlight as a main benefit. But again, that messaging of like, we know we want to make sure people feel like that this machine is efficient. We want to make sure that we're also speaking to them with a lot of care, and like that we care and that we do things with intention. So that is going to come through the words that you choose in telling that story. Does that make sense?
Cooper, would love to get your thoughts on this as well, this importance of capturing attention within the first few moments. And I guess, of course, using the right influencers as well to pair with the messages, depending on the type of video it is as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a world where social first is crushing those who are less socially mature, so we say, in terms of their marketing. And it's, kind of obvious. We're only talking about social today. We're not talking about any kind of traditional approaches. And that's for a reason. Is that a Deloitte study came out a couple of years ago that said those who are leading with social in their marketing are literally crushing those competitors who aren't, in terms of sales and awareness and everything else. And it's funny that we talked about the funnel, and the traditional funnel is more and more obsolete. This kind of journey of awareness and then intention and desire and then action. It's more of an infinite loop, right? That you've got to be available everywhere for a variety of different things. So social has become increasingly a search engine. People are going to social media to search. They're not necessarily going to search engines. They're going to go on TikTok or Instagram or somewhere to find out more about a product or a service or a cause. And there needs to be a digital bookshelf that's filled up about you and what you offer. It's got to be there. You got to start now if you haven't done it already. And that is really kind of the key about what you're talking about too, is that where are you going to be that's searchable, but also that you're a part of the conversation in an infinite loop for people who are looking for product information, but they may be looking for entertainment. They may be looking for news. They may want to know what's the latest. They may want ideas about gifts for a 7-year-old boy for Christmas. It's all over the map of what they're looking for, but you got to be there.
So then another question that I have for you is how do you make sure that, how does the brand make sure that the influencer is hitting the marks while still allowing the influencer to be authentic to who they are and to their audience?
That is such an awesome question. And it varies from, it depends on a brand's legal and compliance department, really. So it's this line. You've got to get the brand messaging in there. You have to be able to get across what it is, the action that you want the consumers to take. So we create brand briefs, creative briefs that have like the links to use and the hashtags to use and the overarching brand messaging. And the more that you can allow for creative license from the brand side, with the brands like, go, create, do your thing, you know your audience, go do it. We just want to make sure you link to the right place, you use these hashtags, and you include some of this messaging in your own voice. That's the winner. When it's a highly regulated industry or legal and compliance comes in and there's all that stuff, it starts to lose some of the effectiveness because the audience knows what they're expecting. That's why they're going to that person for content. So letting people be them, and I think that's what you were thinking about, is the sweet spot.
Certainly. I think one of the best lines I think you said there was, social media platforms have been increasingly used as search tools. Make sure to write that one down, everyone. So another thing you said to us before, Cooper, was sometimes when you're releasing content, it takes 99 iterations of those, and they don't do so well, but it's the 100th that takes off. So I'm curious, how does this experimentation and iteration impact the creation of, content for both of you?
I was actually referencing video when I was talking about it, so that'd be a great one for you to talk about.
So, and repeat the question back one more time.
Yeah, it's a question about experimentation and iteration, because sometimes even similar content doesn't succeed, whereas a slightly different variant does.
Yeah. So, and that comes down to, and I know Cooper knows a lot about this, but A/B testing. That's a term. If anybody doesn't know what A/B testing is taking different pieces of content and putting it out to different audiences, and testing out two different pieces of content. So if I have a video and I want to see if the first part of the video or the second part of the video is going to perform, which one performs better, I'm going to take that first part of the video, put it out to a targeted audience and everything like that, and test it out. And then I'm going to take the second piece of that content, put it out to a different audience, see how it fares out with them. That's called A/B testing. And it's a way for you to know which content is landing, which content is not going to land before you actually like do your full-on campaign. A/B testing is a good way to know how things are going to perform. And then to your point, the more you put it out there, the more you advertise it, the more you push that content, it may not reach that person the first time. It may not reach them the second time. It may not reach them the third time. But eventually, like if they keep seeing it enough, you're going to go, okay, let me see what this is saying. Everybody keeps talking about it. I keep seeing it on my timeline. I keep going across of it. Eventually, they'll just give it a listen or they'll give it a watch. But you have to keep pushing it out there and pushing it out there and pushing it out there and A/B testing and A/B testing. That's what I would say.
Yep, absolutely. And it's consistency. So, and you probably see this too, is that there sometimes you try a marketing tactic, and let's say you get a couple influencers to talk about your brand or your product, and it doesn't necessarily take off. You didn't sell out overnight, right? So you're like, forget it, didn't work. It's consistency. Probably the same thing, like one video. Oh, well, it has to be done over and over and over again. Coming up in the elevator, Barry and I were talking about how you have to hear things over and over and over again. We are not wired to remember something the first time we hear it. So it's really important for a marketing journey to include consistency, long-term, commit to these messages and make sure that they show up again and again and again, because it takes that time.
So I'm very curious, how is success measured? What are some of the KPIs for this experimentation when it's accepted that success isn't always guaranteed the first try?
So there's a lot of different ways that you can measure success of things. And it really does depend on the reason that you're putting that piece of content out. If I say my goal with this piece of content is to just drive engagement under the comments or something like that, then I'm going to look at, well, what do I want? How much engagement do I want to see under this versus how much engagement am I usually seeing across my content as a whole? So you can measure it through engagement. You can measure it through clicks. So how many people are watching the content and then going on and clicking the link in the bio or going to the website or going to get in contact with me. You can measure it through that way. You can measure it through looking at your stats and going, oh, like how much reach am I getting? Like how many people are being reached in this? You can go, how many new users am I gaining? That's more of like an awareness thing. So it does depend on what your actual marketing goal is, whether it be brand awareness, whether it be engagement, whether it be sales. And you can tailor whatever piece of content the video content is to link with that goal.
That's an awesome answer. And going back to what you said before too, is that making sure that it's an opportunity to gain insight and do some analysis. So if it didn't work, if messaging didn't work, it wasn't a failure. You learned something. That didn't work. So let's try it again. Maybe it'll work said in a different way. What is going on in the comments section? What kind of insight can you get? Hey, they really liked when I talked about this, but nobody responded to this. They really clicked on this and liked it and shared it, but crickets on this other thing. So every single thing is a learning opportunity, and it's really important to use them all for insight analysis and to learn to move forward. So that's great.
And then this is something that I tested out on my own platform. You need to also pay attention to what times you're posting things, because that matters more than you would think. There's a post, I put up a post of something maybe a month ago, and I put it up it was like sometime in the evening or something like that. It got maybe 3 likes. That was it. Now, usually when I put posts up, I usually put them up in the morning, and by midway through the morning, I'm already at 40 or 50. So that shows you like it matters what time you post as well, because you have to understand when is your audience more likely to be engaging with your content and things of that nature. Because as a brand, what you have to understand is that you're a TV channel in a sense. All these social channels, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, like it's a channel. So when I'm watching TV, I'm gonna go to NBC because NBC has this show or that show or this show that I want to see, that I want to watch. So at any moment in time, they could go, oh, I want to visit this person's profile, or I'm scrolling through I'm surfing, I'm channel surfing, and this is the time that I usually channel surf. And TV works the exact same way. They slate their shows based on when they know people are gonna want to watch this. So Sunday Night Football gets slated at a certain time. Some of your favorite shows get slated at a certain time because they know that that's the time, that's the most optimal time that you're going to watch. And that's where they sell some of the ads, and they go, it's going to cost you $100 million to get an ad spot during this time period, because they know that that's when a majority of people are going to watch. So you need to pay attention to that as well.
How do you use your back-end analytics for that?
So what do you mean?
Is there information that you get from your analytics that help you determine what's resonating, where you're getting traffic, what time, audience, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So like, and you can use HubSpot for it. You could look at actual Instagram or TikTok and look at like the insights, and you can see, I know Instagram, they break it down into like male, female, they could break it down into demographics and things like that. HubSpot is another good spot to do that as well. And you can just collect the data of what the reach is, how many people are getting reached, how many people are seeing the post, and things of that nature.
So admittedly, I'm someone who's on LinkedIn quite a lot. So I have a little bit of insight on this one, Cooper. Firstly, I think you have to know where in the world your audience is, especially if you're, say, on LinkedIn doing B2B. Something we notice at Sitewiz is we have a lot of clients who are in CEST. They're in European time zones. So when it's 12 p.m. for us, it's 6 p.m. for them, which means they're not really checking LinkedIn a whole lot anymore. So first, I think it's identifying which segment you're trying to target. And another thing is, as Jibril mentioned, mornings are generally a good time to try to post. People like to look at LinkedIn, if you're using LinkedIn, before they go to work. So I think there are a couple of best practices that, even though it varies and there's some idiosyncrasy depending on who your audience is, mornings are a good time to consider. I think your question about back-end analytics, also it's a little bit of trial and error. When you're doing LinkedIn, you can sort of analyze the post throughout the day. It's a little bit more visual rather than data-driven on that side. So
do you find there's certain types of content you post that really resonates, or does it change? Wait a second, that worked before.
yes, it's a very audience-specific question. For us, I think moments when you're including the story of the organization you're a part of, rather than, as Jibril pointed out, just the milestones or awards that you won. Say, oh, I reached this first place in this rising influencer category for experimentation. I made a post about that, and it didn't start with, I won this award. It started with, hey, over the last few months, I've been doing all these learnings, talking to as many people as I can, and here's the results of that. People want to see a journey, not necessarily just a snapshot. That's how they get behind you, and they're invested in you personally. Thanks. Any other thoughts on this topic before we move on? Roy, I'm not sure how much time we have. Awesome. One thing I want to ask you both, and I'm sure everyone in the audience is dying to know as well, what advice do you both have for aspiring or current founders?
My advice is for founders and aspiring founders is to understand, build systems. Systems are going to make everything so much easier for you and for anybody that you bring on and make a part of the business in any capacity. The more that you can set up and understand, how do I do this thing? What's my process for making an invoice? I do this, I do this, I do this, and I write it down. What's my process for getting leads? I do this, I do this, I do this, and I do this, and I write it down. All those things can be built in. Those are systems that you can now allow other people, as you bring them in, to now do, instead of them having to always come to you to figure out how to do the thing. They already have a whole spreadsheet here of how to do the thing. And it frees you up a little bit so that you have more time to focus on what you need to focus on. And it just makes it easier for yourself to know, like, oh, I can just refer back. If I'm just a single founder, I can just refer back to my systems. Oh, I know I need to do this, this, and this in order to check it off the list for the day. So I would just say build systems.
God, these guys are so good. So when you asked this, I thought about like, what did I wish somebody said to me back in 2006? And not that I would have listened, but is that you got to work. I mean, being a founder is so you're everywhere, right? And it's you don't have any time to think, and your hair's on fire, and you're thrown into the deep end of the pool, and but you got to work on yourself, and you got to take the time to do that deep work and build it into your systems. That time to think, because really, at the end of the day, founders, I don't know, I know I was like this. I don't know if those of you out there are founders are like this, but if only I get this client, if only I hit this amount of, revenue, if only we get XYZ, it's going to be great. Smooth sailing from then. That's not the case, because you get to the top of that mountain and think, I did it. And guess what? You look out and there's another mountain and you got to climb that one. But if you're lucky, you get better at climbing mountains. So it's not, life isn't going to get easier, but you ideally are going to get better. And that's going to require that deep work. And it's going to require the working on yourself. And it's going to require looking in the mirror and taking that time to do it, because otherwise those mountains are going to stay hard. So
Thank you so much for your words of advice. Thank you so much for answering all the questions, Cooper, Jibril. Everyone, can we get a round of applause for Cooper and Jibril? They were amazing. And now we'd like to open up the floor for any questions that you all might have for them. And pass you the mics.
Thank you so much, Drake, Cooper, and Jibril. I'll be walking around with the mic for you to ask your question. But before I do that, Drake, you reminded me that I forgot something very important, which is thanking our sponsors who make events like this at Innovation Works possible. So thank you to Buchanan, Farrow's Properties, and Sisterson for that. All right, now that I've said that, let's get onto the Q&A. And just please know you're asking the question to everyone on the panel, so feel free to be precise. Can I see hands one more time? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Zevi. I was trying to formulate exactly what I want to understand, but video has been something that's obviously been we've all been bombarded with it. And I've been thinking about how audio might be also becoming very popular, but it's still not separate from video, because you have these long podcasts, but then they'll share snippets of it. Which will kind of play into what you do, Jibril. I don't know. I don't know what my question is. I guess I'm just curious what you guys think about it. Have you thought about it? I know that lots of companies, it's almost table stakes. A large company, they have some kind of podcast. And is that a trend, or is that a pattern, right? Is that going to continue? Or is that just something that's going to peak and then kind of fall off? Yeah, I don't know. Is that a good question?
It's a great question. It kind of lends itself a little bit to there's this thing, I don't know if anybody ever heard the term, but it's called sonic marketing. And sonic marketing is it's like these key little noises and sounds that relate back to the brand. So I'm trying to think of there's brands out there that have their slogan or this theme song. And every time you hear that theme song, you automatically go, oh, that's so-and-so brand. It's triggering. And that's branding, but it's called sonic marketing. So you relate this sound to this brand. And that is very, very powerful, because anytime that you hear that sound, no matter what, you're gonna think about that brand. And that's super, super powerful because that's what do they call it? Brand it's escaping me. Recognition. But in a more higher term, audio is only going to continue to rise. Audio is super, super, super important. Podcasting, as the last time I thought about, or the last time I researched it, it was still on the rise and it was expected to continue to rise. But sound and audio is super, super, super important, especially in video and everything like that. There's content that I've seen where it's been nobody talking, it's literally just sound, and it did numbers. So it is going to continue to rise, in my opinion.
This is a really great question, and I have a number of things I want to add about this as well. One of my professors at CMU, Carnegie Mellon, who teaches marketing, gave a really good example of the power of audio to sort of answer your question and back Jibril up here. He pointed out there's this game called Dumb Ways to Die. And it's a funny kids game, animated characters, and they stick their fingers in microwaves and do all of these stupid things and die. Surprise, surprise. Australian game. And there was a train station that was having an increase in people who were jumping off the tracks or getting a little bit too close. So what they did to combat this problem is they would play the theme music of Dumb Ways to Die, and that decreased the number of deaths dramatically. Just the audio. It's an interesting example. I really like that professor. Another thing, and Dan over here, Dan is Alpha Lab mentor, and he's one of the founders of WebVisio. I know Dan would agree with me on this one because he gave me this advice. Even though audio is very powerful, when it comes to video making, people really like to see human faces. And when I did a post on LinkedIn launching our product at Sitewiz, one of the most successful posts was a post where my face was on it and I was doing the talking. Much more successful than where we just did a product demo with no face. So the way that I see it from my experience, face and audio is great. Audio is also great, but I've seen better success with face and audio so far. People really need that human connection. They like to see people.
But if you can, we got to remember that infinite loop, the funnel that's going away, and now that it's an infinite loop, and being where people are in their journey on a day. So consumers like to see a brand messaging and consistently. So if you are going to be doing podcasting, I agree with you. I think it's going to continue. It's sticky. But if you can do it, be there, because there is going to be an audience for it.
Thank you so much. I have time for 2 more questions. Oh my gosh, everyone. So here you go, Beth.
I have to ask this. I'm sorry. Generative AI is everywhere, and it's being used to create content, images, videos, copy. What challenges and opportunities do you see with that?
So it is my world for a number of reasons. One, generative AI is taking over academia, as well as Sitewiz, the company that I'm building, is all about generative AI. So actually a funny conversation I had with my co-founders was, we believe they'll get to a point where it'll be very valuable if something can be proven to be human made or human written, because generative AI is great at creating, like you said, copy or images, but if it has the flaws that humans have, a human wrote it and it's personable. When you get an email, and I'm sure you all get a lot of emails from just cold outreach that seem like they could have been written by AI. If you see a mistake in the email, you almost feel, oh, I know someone actually wrote that and is actually, it's a person. So yeah, really. It's a really good question. So there are a number of impacts, of course. Generative AI has it. I guess it makes everyone more numb because words are just easily accessible, even well-written words. So I believe the human flaws are sort of the way to create value in the future.
Thanks, Drake. I am going to own my typos now. I appreciate that advice. Other questions?
Hi. So my question is about specifically targeting social media for marketing non-traditional products. So I think that is the wider question, but for my example, particularly, we're a genetic testing company. And I liked what you're talking about using social media as a search engine almost, but I can fully admit, and this is specifically with prenatal screening, so pregnancy, women's health, I don't know if I would go to social media first to find my prenatal screening or to look for my genetic testing. So that's that specific example, but I was curious your thoughts on using social media to market some of those more non-traditional products and making sure you're still reaching the people you want to reach, even if they may be a bit hesitant. Thank you. Sorry.
You're good.
So you personally would not go to platforms to search? Explain that a little bit.
Regular search engine first as opposed to something like Instagram or Twitter when it comes to, and I'm fully, fully admitting that, maybe that wouldn't be my first inclination as opposed to just going on Google, or I'm sure there's directories and things that have certain doctors, things you can look at. So I guess it's how do I kind of take that attention and market in these social media areas where people may be hesitant to.
So, are you doing anything now?
Yes, we are. I believe we're on Instagram.
Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter or X.
Okay. And so is it more just product updates and information about the company? Educational? How are you using, what's a consumer story that would be impactful for people to hear?
I feel like, sorry, consulting my partner here.
Yeah, one of our founders' stories has deep personal connection to this type of testing because it impacted his life. So that is a good way to build a connection around a brand that's not familiar with our target audiences.
Have you used that story?
In non blogs and
And on our website.
on our
as well.
website, but on social media, it's hard to know how to do it in a sensitive way that's still compelling. Because it is personal to that person.
Absolutely. So leaning into the human side of the story is important. If you can find influencers that would have an authentic connection, a real connection to what you do, and have them tell the story. It's interesting. We do a lot of work around flu vaccines and people talking personally about why it's so important to them. I know it's very different, but it is sort of still a personal health topic. And one of the women we work with screenshotted the analytics on TikTok, the search terms, because the creators can see what people searched in order to get to that content. And it was so interesting to see the terms that people used, prenatal flu shot, all of these very specific questions about the health related to getting this flu shot and the impact on this individual people that led to her piece of content. So while you may not do that, others are. And so it is important to build that digital bookshelf in a sensitive way, but that it's telling that relatable human story. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this too.
Well, I think you said it. I think you said it all.
We can talk too and brainstorm. Okay.
I loved how this turned into a working session. Thank you so much. No, you're absolutely fine. I want to again thank Drake, Cooper, and Jibril. Can we have another round of applause to them? It's really great to have people who are such experts in the field, and also, local experts in Pittsburgh that we can really grow off of the wealth of information and knowledge that they have. So at this time, you know, the panel discussion's over. It's time for networking. So if you have any additional questions, you're welcome to connect with Drake, Cooper, and Jibril now and ask them, you know, chat with each other. I do have an opportunity for about 10 people if you are interested. Our robotics technician, Luca, is able to give a tour of our shop space to about 10 people. So if you are interested in something like that, it'll take about 10 minutes, and you're welcome to meet me back by the stairwell now. Thank you. Enjoy.